Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
5 years ago, I was just a regular office worker when my husband got a job offer that required us to relocate. His new position was at a company owned by his uncle, my boss now, and things were actually going great for a while. My boss turned out to be an amazing person who helped us get settled, and eventually offered me a position at his company too. The problem? His daughter. Let's call her the boss's daughter. She's hated me from day one, convinced I'm somehow trying to steal her place in the family or something equally ridiculous. I tried to be nice, kept my distance, but nothing worked. Things got so bad that she actually broke into our house once and assaulted me, leaving me hospitalized. My boss was furious and cut ties with her after that, which only made her hate me more. But that's just the backstory. What happened last week takes the cake. I was woken up by screaming, which sadly wasn't uncommon lately. When I left my room, I saw my brother-in-law in the hallway. He just told me to watch what was happening downstairs. In the living room, I saw my boss, my husband, my boss's son, and in the middle of them all was the boss's daughter, crying and begging. She was pleading with her father to forgive her, saying she would do anything. All my boss said was for her to get out. She protested, saying he couldn't keep shutting her out and that it wasn't fair. Then she pulled out a knife, holding it to her own throat. She threatened to kill herself right there, adding that she was pregnant and his grandchild would die too. My boss didn't even flinch. He just calmly told her that if she was going to do it, to please do it in the kitchen, because blood was hard to get out of cream carpet. When she asked if he thought she was joking, he simply replied that her threats didn't work on him anymore and that she should go ahead. He didn't care. That's when my boss's son exploded. He asked if she was serious, saying this exact situation was why their dad hated her. He demanded to know what sane person would do this, and told her that their dad hated her because of all the nonsense she'd put him through, what she'd put the whole family through, and especially what she'd put me through. That's when she spotted me watching from the stairs. Her face twisted with rage, and suddenly she was charging at me with the knife. My boss managed to grab her, but in the struggle, the knife slashed across his face, from his left eyebrow, across his eye, over his nose, and to his right cheek. The police came and arrested her, but that wasn't the end. Her grandmother, my boss's ex-mother-in-law and uncle, decided to get revenge for their precious little girl. While we were out at dinner trying to recover from the trauma, they broke into our house. They dragged everything they could onto the lawn and set it on fire. What they couldn't move, they destroyed with bleach or smashed to pieces. My teenage son's pet frogs were killed. His carefully tended plants were destroyed. My twins' rooms were demolished. Even my baby's custom-made furniture handcrafted by my grandmother was reduced to ashes. We're staying with a family friend now while trying to piece our lives back together. The boss's daughter is in jail, facing serious charges. Her grandmother and uncle were arrested too, but the damage is done. My boss lost vision in his left eye and the scar will be permanent. The boss's daughter finally admitted to everything she'd done. All her lies about me, her previous assault, everything. She's looking at significant prison time, especially since she was already on probation for the first attack. Her grandmother and uncle are facing multiple felony charges for arson and breaking and entering. The judge wasn't sympathetic to their "but we did it for family" excuse, especially when the prosecutor pointed out they destroyed their own grandchildren's nieces and nephews' belongings in their quest for revenge. They're all going away for a long time, and we've got restraining orders against a whole bunch. My boss is in recovery, both physically and mentally. He's finally getting proper therapy to deal with his toxic ex-wife's family, and we're slowly rebuilding. Insurance is covering most of the damage, and our community has been incredibly supportive, helping us replace what was lost. The boss's daughter keeps trying to send letters from jail, alternating between apologizing and blaming me for ruining her life. They go straight in the shredder. My boss summed it up perfectly when he said that some people choose to be victims their whole lives. that they'll burn down the world and blame everyone else for the ashes, but we're choosing to rebuild instead. 3 years ago, I was head over heels in love with who I thought was the perfect guy. We had a whirlwind romance, got married within a year, and I thought I had hit the jackpot. He was charming, successful, or so I thought, and convinced me that we should combine our finances to build our future together. That's when the red flags started appearing. First, it was small things. Forgotten bills, mysterious expenses, and always being just a little short on his share of the rent. Then came the bigger issues. I discovered he had been lying about his job, pretending to go to work, while actually gambling away our savings at the casino. The breaking point came when I found out he had maxed out 3 credit cards in my name. That's when I knew I had to get out. The divorce was messy, but I managed to escape with most of my dignity intact. However, there was one loose end I hadn't noticed until recently. I was still the owner of his phone on our joint plan. I discovered this gem of information when looking through my monthly expenses. For the past 4 months, I had been paying for his phone without even realizing it. The moment I figured this out, I knew exactly what to do. I called T-Mobile and told them I wanted to report one of my phones as stolen. The customer service representative asked me to verify my account information. After I did that, they helped me get his phone shut off. It felt good. Really good. But what happened next was even better. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. When I answered, my ex immediately demanded to know why his phone wasn't working. I played it cool, telling him I was glad he called because I had noticed something interesting about our phone situation. He started getting agitated, saying he needed his phone for work. That's when I reminded him that we never properly separated our phone plan during the divorce, and I was still the legal owner of his phone. After a pause, he tried to negotiate, offering to pay me $40 for the last month if I would turn the phone back on. I couldn't help but laugh quietly as I explained that we needed to discuss more than just last month. He owed me for 4 months of phone payments, plus the $110 he never paid me for our last joint phone bill. He protested, claiming he couldn't afford that amount. I simply replied that if he couldn't afford it, then he couldn't afford a phone. 5 minutes later, my phone dinged with a Cash App notification. He had sent the full amount. But I wasn't done yet. I told him we needed to have a 3-way call with T-Mobile to transfer everything to his name. On the call with T-Mobile, we discovered something delicious. He had missed the deadline to sign the transfer paperwork, meaning I was still the legal owner of his phone. I asked the customer service representative to confirm the call was being recorded, which they did. Then I laid out my terms to my ex. Since I was still the legal owner, he could only use the phone under my conditions. He would need to pay 3 months in advance that Friday, plus $40 on the first of every month until the phone was paid off. If he missed a single payment, the phone would be shut off again. He tried to accuse me of blackmail, but I shut that down quickly. I reminded him that he had stolen from me, maxed out my credit cards, and left me to clean up his mess. This was just the interest on his debt. The customer service representative asked him if he agreed to these terms, and after a long pause, he reluctantly said yes. I cheerfully reminded him that his first payment was due Friday and not to be late. I hung up feeling like I had finally won something back from all he had taken from me. 3 days later, Friday came, and wouldn't you know it, the payment arrived right on time. Now every month, I get a little reminder in the form of a $40 payment that karma is real, and sometimes she works through phone contracts. He can't even complain about it to anyone because he knows he's the one who messed up. Every time I get that payment notification, I treat myself to a nice coffee and toast to the power of reading the fine print in divorce papers. I've been friends with Karen since college, where we were roommates for 3 years. We weren't really close, but we kept in touch through social media and occasional meetups. She always had this competitive streak, especially when it came to relationships and social status. Whenever someone in our friend group got engaged or married, she'd spend weeks talking about how she had better prospects lined up. Last spring, everything changed when my best friend got engaged. Karen attended the engagement party, and I noticed how she kept making passive-aggressive comments about how some people find love so easily. A week later, she called me, practically screaming with excitement about her own engagement. When I expressed my surprise and mentioned that I didn't even know she was dating anyone, she brushed it off by claiming she'd been keeping it private because he was a private investigator whose work required discretion. When I asked when we could meet him, she quickly deflected, saying he was currently working on a big case and they needed to keep things low-key for his safety. I thought it was odd, but Karen had always been a bit dramatic, so I didn't question it too much. Then the wedding invitations started arriving. Not just to close friends, she sent them to everyone she'd ever met. My co-worker, who had met her once at a company party 3 years ago, received one. So did the barista at her local coffee shop. The invitation was extravagant, with gold foil and handmade paper. It included multiple links to registry websites filled with luxury items. The cheapest thing was a $200 soap dispenser. There was also a link for direct cash gifts, with a minimum contribution of $500. When people started asking questions about the mysterious groom, Karen's stories became increasingly elaborate. She claimed he was working undercover in Europe, which was why they needed to keep things private on social media. When my co-worker asked about meeting him at the wedding, Karen came up with an absurd explanation about how he'd have to do the ceremony with just his eyes showing, supposedly for security reasons. Things got weirder when she created a fake social media profile for her fiancé, but all the photos were clearly stock images of different men in suits. When I confronted her about this, she turned defensive, accusing me of being jealous because her fiancé had such an important job and demanded to know why I couldn't be happy for her. She started guilt-tripping anyone who questioned the registry prices, insisting that if we really cared about her happiness, we'd understand that she deserved these expensive things for her special day. The breaking point came during my best friend's baby shower. Karen showed up uninvited and had a complete meltdown. She started ranting about how none of us understood how hard it was to plan a wedding when your fiancé was saving the world. She called us all selfish for focusing on our boring, normal relationships while she was engaged to a hero. My best friend's sister, who actually works in law enforcement, started asking specific questions about Karen's fiancé's supposed agency and role. Karen's answers made no sense, mixing up federal agencies and making claims that anyone with basic knowledge of law enforcement would know were impossible. That's when I decided to do some digging. I reached out to her parents, who had no idea about any engagement. In fact, they revealed she'd been living with them for the past year after losing her job, and she definitely wasn't dating anyone. I created a group chat with everyone who'd received an invitation and shared my findings. Some people had already sent expensive gifts, which Karen had quickly sold online for cash. The final showdown happened at a local restaurant where she'd been collecting some of the wedding gifts. I arranged for everyone who'd been scammed to show up at once. When we confronted her, she tried to maintain the lie, but then her phone buzzed, and we all saw that her dating app notification was clearly visible. Karen had a massive tantrum in the middle of the restaurant, screaming about how we were all ruining her special day and how we didn't understand true love. The restaurant manager called security when she started throwing bread baskets at people. We later found out she'd collected over $23,000 in gifts and cash. Those who sent gifts through official registries were able to get refunds, but the people who sent cash directly to her were out of luck. The aftermath was swift. She lost her entire social circle, and someone reported her to the authorities for fraud. She ended up having to move to another state after the story spread through our community. And now, whenever someone gets legitimately engaged, we all demand to see their partner's face immediately. I've been living in this neighborhood for over 15 years now. My wife and I chose it specifically because of how peaceful it was, the kind of place where you could actually get to know your neighbors and build a real community. Everything was perfect until about 6 months ago when she moved in across the street. From day one, we all knew something was off. This woman showed up with a ring light in one hand and her phone in the other. She was live streaming her entire move-in process, talking to her besties about how she was blessing this basic suburban neighborhood with her presence and how she was going to transform this sleepy little community into content gold. At first, we tried to be welcoming. My wife even baked her famous chocolate chip cookies and took them over. Big mistake. Karen immediately went live, shoved the camera in my wife's face, and started critiquing the aesthetic presentation of the cookies. She condescendingly suggested that next time we should use a vintage copper plate instead of our basic ceramic one, because apparently her followers expected a certain level of sophistication. Things only got worse from there. Every morning she'd set up her equipment on her front lawn and film our neighbors leaving for work. The retired couple next door couldn't even garden without her narrating their every move for her morning routine inspo videos. She would loudly comment about these adorable boomers living their best life and constantly remind her viewers to like and subscribe. One day, she walked over to my house at 7 a.m. She complained that my lawnmower was ruining her morning meditation video and asked me to stop. When I explained I was just mowing my lawn on a Saturday morning, she whined about her followers, waiting for their daily Zen moment. She even had the audacity to suggest I mow in a diagonal pattern because it would look better for her background. The real trouble started when she began her aesthetic improvement campaign. She'd go door to door with her camera rolling. She told one neighbor their hydrangeas were throwing off the vibe of her content and suggested they replace them with pampas grass because it was more Instagram-worthy. Another time, she complained to someone that their red car was clashing with her color scheme and asked if they could either park it in the garage or maybe get a beige one instead. The lemonade stand incident was what really pushed everyone over the edge. She set up this elaborate booth with fairy lights and vintage decor, charging $15 for a small glass of lemonade because it was artisanal content creator juice. She went around filming herself knocking on doors, trying to get people to support her girl boss business, promising to feature buyers in her Instagram story. When I questioned the ridiculous $15 price tag, she lectured me about how we weren't just paying for lemonade, but investing in an experience. Plus, she'd tag us as neighbor goals. But the last straw was when she started manufacturing drama for views. She began spreading rumors that my wife was running an illegal gambling ring from our basement. It was actually just our weekly book club. She filmed expose videos about the retired couple's suspicious late-night activities. They were stargazing with their grandkids. She even accused the family down the street of running a counterfeit handbag operation because she saw them carrying shopping bags into their house. We tried reasoning with her. When I told her to stop making up lies about people because these were our actual lives, not entertainment, she dismissed my concerns. She insisted we just didn't understand content creation, claiming that drama equals engagement, and that she was doing us all a favor by making us famous. The final showdown happened during her biggest project yet. She decided to stage a fake neighborhood scandal involving a non-existent affair, complete with hired actors pretending to be private investigators. She was going to film the whole thing as a multi-part series. What she didn't count on was that one of her hired actors would have a conscience. He showed up early that morning and warned us about her plan. We contacted the police and they were waiting when she started her little performance. When the police interrupted her live stream, she tried to incorporate them into her content, but they quickly shut that down by informing her of the multiple complaints about harassment, invasion of privacy, and attempting to orchestrate a criminal conspiracy for social media content. When she protested that she was an influencer and this was her job, it fell on deaf ears. The charges included harassment, invasion of privacy, commercial activity without permits, and attempted fraud. Turns out she'd also been running several fake giveaways and scamming her followers. Her entire arrest was captured on her own live stream by her own ring light, which she refused to put down even as they were reading her rights. Even as they were taking her away, she was still trying to create content, telling her viewers not to forget to like and subscribe and adding a jail content hashtag. She was sentenced to community service and banned from posting on social media for a year. She moved back in with her parents in another state. Our neighborhood returned to its peaceful state. Though now we all have a story to tell, about the time an influencer tried to turn our lives into her content farm. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.